Creating a good pattern for your fursuit head is all about achieving that perfect balance between small strips that will hug curves and large strips that will hold the pattern together. In this tutorial, I'll go over my general philosophy for creating that perfect balance. A snug fit is essential if you want an accurate pattern that will capture every shape of your base. I tend to start in the smile crease because this is the most important part of the pattern for me. I use thin strips in this area because I want each piece of tape to lay flat as I apply it. If the strips were wider, they would pucker and fold while I was covering the base, making the resulting pattern not an accurate representation of the shapes beneath. Next, I tape around the eye. I like to install my eyes before furring the head, so I tape right up to the edge of the eyelash line. If you add your fursuit eyes later in the process, just tape to the place where you'd like the fur to end. Under where the final eye will be, but not so close to the opening that it obstructs your vision. There's no need to place a layer between your base and your tape. If the tape is removed quickly, within a few days, you shouldn't notice any damage to your base, even if it's foam. When you leave the duct tape on a foam base for more than a week, I've noticed that the two materials will begin to fuse. The tape becomes stickier and harder to remove, which can result in some tearing of your foam base. This damage will usually cause more issues during the patterning stage, as it prevents the tape from lying flat. If a section of the pattern, like the cheek fluff, will be constructed from a bunch of small tiny pieces of tape, I will first lay down a long thin piece. This first long piece will give me a place to cut the pattern later. Without this piece of tape, the small strips would separate when they were cut. Tight curves often require a lot of small strips of tape. Instead of placing a supporting piece of tape under the small strips, like we did on the cheek fluff, we can place one large piece on top. It serves the same function. Here on the lower jaw, I use both a thin long strip and a short wide piece to offer this support. To create the neck pattern, I first lift my base 2 inches above the shoulders. I like to make the neck a little oversized, as it ensures that there's no gaps when the fursuiter tilts their head forward or back. Next, I use a shopping bag or a large piece of paper and tape it to the bottom of my base. This head will have a pullover style neck, so I make sure it's wide enough to fit a human head. Adding tape gives the pattern structure. If your neck will be fitted, opening in the back with something like a zipper, measure and tailor the pattern to achieve your preferred shape. This Chow Chow has a very deep wrinkle on the bridge of his muzzle. Like the cheek fluff and the jaw, I add a long thin strip of tape. This will hold the tiny pieces that will cover this curve together, and it will also ensure that the pattern is touching the bottom of the wrinkle. If the tape comes up too short, I will cut it with my box cutter and press it until it's flat. If cutting this tape leaves a gap, I will add another strip on top. Your fursuit base is probably stronger than you think it is. When removing the tape pattern from this base, I will cut it with my box cutter and scissors. These cuts will not affect the way the fur lays on the final base, and most of these cuts won't even be visible when the pattern is removed. I always start removing the pattern in the place that looks the easiest. Long straight seams, a surface that is eye level, the feature that is receiving the strongest light in my workroom. the entire pattern needs to be removed, so it doesn't really matter where you start. If the fur pattern is very difficult, sometimes I'll remove a single piece of the pattern, cut it out of the fur, and then pin the fur to the base before I remove the next pattern piece. I prefer using the box cutter everywhere I can, but sometimes a curve is just too tight or awkwardly placed, and I have to switch to a small pair of scissors, like these embroidery scissors. If you slip while cutting the tape, falling off your drawn pattern line, you can fix this mistake by just taping the pattern back together. Redraw your pattern line and give it another go. And that's it. Next time, we'll go over how I determine where to place these pattern lines. Thanks for watching.